Lesson 3. Rights of Victim. Who may exercise victim's right? A victim is usually defined as a person who has been directly harmed by a crime that was committed by another person. Some victims' rights apply only to victims of felonies, more serious crimes, while others also grant legal rights to victims of misdemeanors, less serious crimes, the family member of homicide victim, or the parent or guardian of a minor. Incompetent person or person with a disability are the ones who could exercise victims' rights on behalf of the victims. Yan daw po ay kung paano daw po malalaman kung ano ang victim's right. Ang victim's right po ay yung po karapatan ng isang biktima sa krimen na nangyari. United Nations Declaration of Basic Principles of Justice for Victims' Crime and Abuse of Power. Access to justice and fair treatment. Victims should be treated with compassion and respect for their dignity. They are entitled to access to the mechanisms of justice and to prompt redress as provided for by national legislation for the harm that they have suffered. Number 2. Judicial and administrative mechanisms should be established, strengthened where necessary to enable victims to obtain redress through formal or informal procedures that are expeditious, fair, and accessible. Victims should be informed of their rights in seeking redress through such mechanism. Yun. Ang ibig sabihin po ng dalawang statements ay ang victim daw po ay kailangan meron siyang ugnayan po sa lahat po ng justice system na makakatulong sa kanya, at kailangan po na maging patas ang gagawin sa kanyang kaso, at kailangan po ay hindi bias ang mangyayari sa loob ng korte. The responsiveness of judicial and administrative process of the needs of victims should be facilitated. Informing victims of their role and the scope, timing, and progresses of proceedings, and a disposition of their case, especially where serious crimes are involved and where they have requested such information. Yun, kailangan daw po ng malaman ng biktima kung ano po ang kanilang role at kung ano po ang scope na mangyayari sa loob ng paglilitis po ng kanilang kaso. Allowing the views and concerns of victims to be presented and considered at appropriate stages of the proceedings where their personal interests are affected, without prejudice to the accused and consistent with the relevant national criminal justice system. Yun po. Kailangan daw po na mabigyan pansin po ang mga concerns ng biktima para po sa mga stages ng proceeding ng kanilang kaso. Providing proper assistance to victims throughout the legal process. Yun po, kailangan daw po ng assistance ng isang victim sa sa kalagitnaan po ng pagpuproseso po. Taking measures to minimize inconvenience to victims, protect their privacy when necessary, and ensure their safety as well as that of their families and witnesses on their behalf from intimidation and retaliation. Yun po. Kailangan daw pong kailangan po maging komportable daw po ang victim at kailangan daw po magkameron ng proteksyon at privacy pag daw po ang pamilya po ng biktima ay kumbaga humaharap po sa kaso, ay kailangan po nila ng safety. Avoiding unnecessary delay in disposition of case and the execution of orders or decrease granting awards to victims. Yun po, kailangan po na hindi madelay ang kaso po, at yung pagbibigay ng parusa sa pag-execute po ng order ng court sa naging sa accused. Informal mechanisms for the resolution of disputes, including mediation, arbitration, and customary justice of indigenous practice should be utilized where appropriate to facilitate conciliation and redress for victims. Restitution. Offenders or third parties responsible for their behavior should, where appropriate, make fair restitution to victims, their families, or dependents. Such a restitution should include the return of property or payment for the harm or loss suffered, reimbursement of expenses incurred as a result of the victimization, the provision of service, and the restoration of rights. Number 2, government should review their practices, regulation, and laws to inside the restitution as an available sentencing option in criminal cases, in addition to the other criminal sanctions. Number 3, in case of substantial harm to the environment, restitution, if ordered, should include as far as possible the restoration of the environment, reconstruction of the infrastructure, replacement of community facilities, and reimbursement of the expense of relocation whenever such harm results in the dislocation of a community, where public official or other agents acting. Number 4, where public official or other agents acting in an official or quasi-official capacity have violated national criminal laws, the victim should receive restitution from the state whose officials or agents were responsible for the harm inflicted in case where the government under whose authority the victimizing act or omission occurred is no longer in existence. The state or government successor in the title should provide restitution to the victims. Yun po. Ang restitution po ay, yung pong 1, 2, 3, 4 ay para pong hinimay-himay lang po. Pero po, ang ibig po sabihin nila ay pag po pinagsama-sama ay isa lang po na lang ibig sabihin. Ang ibig sabihin po ng restitution po ay kailangan pong magbayad po ng offender sa biktima kung ano man po ang mga nasira o ano man po ang naharm. Kunyari po ay ang biktima po ay nabalian, nabasag po ang kotse, kailangan pong bayaran ng offender yon at kailangan po ipagamot niya ang victim. Yun ba? Compensation. When compensation is not fully available from the offender or other sources, state should endeavor to provide financial compensation to A. Victims who have sustained significant bodily injury or impairment or physical or mental health as a result of serious crimes, and B. The family, in particular dependents of persons who have died or become physically or mentally incapacitated as a result of such victimization. Number 2, the establishment, strengthening, and expansion of national funds for compensation to victims should be encouraged. Where appropriate, other funds may also be established for this purpose, including those cases where the state of which the victim is a national is not in a position to compensate the victim for the harm. Yun ba? Parang ganun lang din po yung compensation. Ngunit po ay dito po sa compensation ay kumbaga po yung states or the government po ang magbibigay po ng financial na tulong po sa biktima pag po hindi po kayang punan ng offender lahat ng kagustusan na at damage na nagawa niya para sa biktima po. Yun po ang compensation. States or government po ang magbibigay ng financial compensation po, yung tulong. Yun. Assistance. Victims should receive the necessary material, medical, psychological, and social assistance through governmental, voluntary, community-based, and indigenous means. Victims should be informed of the availability of health and social services and other relevant assistance and be readily afforded access to them. Number 3, police, justice, health, social service, and other personal concerns should receive training to sensitive them to the needs of our victims and guidelines to ensure proper and prompt aid. Number 4, in providing services and assistance to victims, attention should be given those who have special needs because of the nature of the harm inflicted or because of factors such as those mentioned in paragraph 3 above. Yun po. Ang assistance po, yun po, from the word assistance po, yung kailangan po ng biktima ng assistance po. Kunwari po, malma po yung tama ng biktima. Kailangan niya po ng mga aid na habang wala pa po siya sa hospital, kailangan niya po ng mga medical, yung mga pang first aid kit po bago po siya bigyan ng assistance sa malalaking hospital para po siya magamot. At ang mga police po, yung po mga gagawa po ng action ay kailangan po ay sila po ay na-train po to magbigay po ng mga needs ng victims at mga mga guidelines para po masiguro nila na ayos po yung magagawa at proper po ang may ilalapat na aid sa biktima. Victims' rights in America. Right to protection. Yun po. Ang right to protection po, yun nga po, pag po ang biktima po ay naharap, kunwari po ay ang biktima po ay naharap na natin po ng mga hearing, kailangan po na ang pulis po ay handa po sa mga, kunwari po magbibigay ng mga death note, mga threat po sa pamilya, sa relatives, ay kailangan po handa po ang mga nasa gobyerno po. Kailangan po, pag pupunta sila ay kailangan po nila may mga escort po na nasa baba. Kailangan po nilang may police escort, witness protection program, relegation and restraining orders po. Right to apply compensation. Yun, parang din po yun na sa una pong paragraph na ang state din po ang magbibigay po ng financial pag po para pong mag-a-apply ka po mag-a-apply ka po sa magbibigay ka po ng para mag-a-apply po ng yung pong kunyari po may nawala po sa inyo, kailangan po yung mabayaran po. Kunyari po, yung pong biktima ay namatay, kailangan po ay babayaran sila ng states pag hindi po kaya ng offender ang gastusin. Yun ba? Right to restitution from the offender. Yun po, tulad po nung nasa nabanggit yun nga po. Kaya kailangan pong bayadan ng offender ang biktima sa mga na-damage or parang katulad lang din po sa Pilipinas po ng Amerika, yung kailangan po na bayaran po ng offender ang biktima sa mga na-damage or mga nawala sa biktima habang ginawa po yung krimen. Yan po. Right to prompt return of personal property. Yun, ito po pala yung wala po doon sa nabanggit ko nung una. Yung pong kunwari po, may yung biktima po nakakotse. Tapos may laman po yung mga 200,000. May 200,000 po sa loob. Yun po. Pag po yung carnapper or holdupper ay ginamit po yung sasakyan niya na getaway vehicle at nahuli po siya, kailangan po na may karapatan po ang biktima na mapabalik sa kanya ang ginamit na sasakyan or kahit anong pong sasakyan na ginamit ng offender laban sa kanya. Yun po ang right to prompt return of personal property. Right to speedy trial, yun nga po. From the word speedy, kailangan po na may karapatan po na ang victims na karapatan niya po na dapat mabilis po ang trial na ginagawa para sa krimen, sa cases niya. Yun po. Right to enforcement or victims' rights. Yun nga po. Yun po yung mga victims' rights na kailangan pong makuha po niya lahat. Hindi naman po sumuko yung may apply niya po yung mga rights na yun sa isang victim, yun ba? Victims' right in the Philippines. Section 1, the 1987 Philippine Constitution, Bill of Rights. No person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process or law, nor shall any person be denied the equal protection of the laws. Yun po. Yun po ang ibig sabihin po nun ay ang ibig sabihin po ng pinakatot po niyan ay wala pong sino man po na magbibiktima ay hindi po kailangan po siyang malamangan sa kanyang, hindi naman po malamangan yung para pong maapakan po ang kanyang karapatan sa kanyang life, sa liberty, property, pag po wala pong due process of law. Kailangan po lahat ay dadaan sa due process of law. Section 11, free access to the courts and quasi-judicial bodies and adequate legal assistance shall not be denied to any person by his reason of poverty. This constitutional provision entails that government shall provide legal assistance to indigent crime victims. Yun po. Kailangan po ang victims po ay may right po sila na bigyan sila ng legal assistance ng gobyerno o kahit ano po na pwede mong bigay sa kanila at hindi po sila pwedeng i-deny dahil po sa reason po ng pagiging mahirap. Yan po ang kailangan pong meron po sila para po nandun po sa doon sa Miranda rights po. Yung doon po sa na kung hindi mo kayang kumuha ng isa ay bibigyan ka ng gobyerno. Yun po. Kailangan, yun po ay karapatan ng isang victim. Section 2. Any person under investigation for the commission of art offense shall have the right to be informed of his right, remain silent, to have competent and independent counsel, preferably of his own choice. If the person cannot afford the service counsel, he must provided with one. These rights cannot be waived except in writing in the presence of counsel. Yun nga po, sinasabi ko. Ang isa pong, ito naman po ay para sa accused po, sa accused. Ang isa pong accused na under investigation sa nagawa niyang krimen ay karapatan niya po na ma-inform sa kanyang mga karapatan para at yung kailangan niya pong maging independent po sa para po makapili siya ng kanyang para po siya makapili ng ayos. At pag po hindi niya po kaya kumuha ng kanyang sariling abogado o yung para po siya ay ipaglaban ay bibigyan po siya ng isang abogado para siya ay tulungan. No torture, force, violence, threat, intimidation, or any other means which vitiate the free will shall be used against him, secret detention places, solidarity, incommunicado, or another similar forms of detention. Yun po. Pag po under investigation po ang accused, bawal po siyang i-torture, bawal po siyang puwersahin, takutin, saktan, pag po siya dahil ang mahusay po ay mga gumawa sa kanya. Bawal po siyang dalhin sa hindi alam na lugar ng korte at hindi nalalaman ng korte. Any confession or admission obtained in violation of this or section 11 hereof shall be admissible in evidence against him. Lahat po ng sasabihin, sa letter C, lahat po ng sasabihin niya o lahat po ng mga ikakanta niya po sa laban po sa kaso ay maaari pong hindi po yun po shall be inadmissible in evidence against him. Yun po. The law shall provide for penal and civil sanction for violation of this section as well as compensation to and rehabilitation of victims of torture or similar practices and their families. This subsection provides that compensation of victims should be granted, which is explicitly enabled by Republic Act number 7309. Republic Act number 7309. It is an act creating a board of claims under the Department of Justice for the victim or of unjust imprisonment or detention and victims of violent crime and for the other purposes. Powers and function of the board. The board shall have the following powers and to receive, evaluate, process, and investigate application for claims under this act. To conduct an independent administrative hearing and resolve application for claims. Grant or deny the same. To deputize appropriate government agencies in order to effectively implement its functions. And to promulgate rules and regulation in order to carry out the objectives of this act. For claimants or application before board claims. Any person who has unjustly accused, convicted, and imprisoned but subsequently released by virtue of a judgment or acquittal. Any person who has unjustly detained and released without being charged. Any victim or arbitrary or illegal detention by the authorities as defined in the revised penal code under final judgment of the court, and any person who is a victim of violent crimes. For purposes of this act, violent crime shall include rape and shall likewise refer to offenses committed with malice which resulted in death or serious physical and or psychological injuries, permanent incapacity or disability, insanity, abortion, serious trauma, or committed with torture, cruelly or barbarity. Award ceiling. For victims of unjust imprisonment or detention, the compensation shall be based on the number of months of imprisonment or detention, and every fraction thereof shall be considered 1 month, provided, however, that in no case shall such compensation exceed 1,000 pesos per month. In all other cases, the maximum amount for which the board may approve a claim shall not exceed 10,000 pesos or the amount necessary reimburse the claimant to express incurred for hospitalization, medical treatment, loss of wage, loss of support, other expenses directly. Yun po, na po sa award ceiling po. Yung pong ang victim po ay yung pong sa victim po na unjust imprisonment or detention, yun po ay bibigyan po siya ng award sa kung ilan po yung tawag dun yung naging kung nakailang araw po yung offender sa yung numbers of prisoner or detention and every fraction thereof shall be considered. Yun po, bibigyan po siya ng award po pag po yung bibilangin po yung araw na naikulong po yung accused, at parang ang example po nun ay bibigyan po siya every day ng 1,000. Tapos hindi po inaproban ng board na hindi po lalagpas ng 10k yung may ibigay na amount for the victim po. Filing of claims. Any person entitled to compensation under this act must, within 6 months after being released from imprisonment or detention, or from the date of victim suffered damage injury, file his claim with department. Otherwise, he is deemed to have waived the same except as provided in this act. No waiver of claim whatsoever is valid. Filing of claims po ay yung para po nagpapile po yung isang tao po para may makuha po siya pagkatapos po sa within 6 months po na siya po ay nakalabas, kailangan niya po mag-file ng claims para may makuha po siya sa government po na tulong pinansyal. Yun. Kunwari po, filing of claims by heirs, yung pag po yung may namatay po, kailangan yung victim po ay namatay, kailangan po mag-file ng mga kamag-anak po para po makuha yung mga award na ibibigay po ng gobyerno po. Resolution of claims. The board shall resolve the claim within 30 working days after filing of application. Yung resolution of claims po, yung pong pagkatapos po ng 30 working days at hindi pa po kinukuha ng mga kamag-anak yung award, ay mawawala po ito at mawawalan pong visa yung kanilang pinail na claims. Yun lang po.